Okay, good evening everybody. Agus forgéid mí le fáilte róh dí an céad ócáid de chuid chuirla chun é á clia heas mar chuid de theachtain bhlá clia ar an gníomh éráide. You're all very welcome to the first event South Dublin County Council is running as part of Dublin's Climate Action Week 2021, an initiative between the four local authorities in Dublin to put climate action to the fore. I just want to highlight that this event is being recorded. You can't be seen or heard as attendees, but just bear that in mind when getting involved in the Q&A. Please don't share any personal details or personal information. This event is being recorded for broadcast. If you have a look on your Microsoft Teams, you'll see a little speech bubble with a question mark. That's where our questions and answers will go. You can pop in any questions you want any one of the panelists or even all of the panelists to answer. And if you see a question that you like, that you want to hear, you can upvote that question and we will ask the questions with the most upvotes as they would be the most popular. This event is, it's going to be interesting, there's no doubt about it, but you're going to have to make it as the audience. So our questions will be the most important things that we can get to today to give you the answers that you're looking for and to let you know what you can do on climate action. So just again, please do not include any personal information as we won't be able to publish the question then. We may not be able to get through all the questions, but you can certainly email us afterwards. If there's any questions you don't have answered that you want to get an answer on, just we'll give you an email address at the end of the event, and then upvote the questions that you do like and we'll ask those most popular ones. So this is the first ever Dublin Climate Action Week, and there will be over 70 online and in-person events taking place over the week. I was at the launch of it this morning in Dunleary. I cycled to and from Dunleary, so forgive me if I seem a little tired. It's because I am. But we're really looking forward to really putting climate change at the center of everything. And it was one of the messages that kind of came through at the launch earlier on today, was that we have to start thinking climate first, and it has to underpin everything we do as a local authority. And at the end of the day, while national policy will be responsible for a great deal of how we can mitigate the worst effects of climate change and how we can really put forward, a national unified front in dealing with climate change, for real leadership, we're going to have to look to local authorities. And South Dublin County Council has a host of wonderful examples of where we are leading the charge on climate action, and we'll hear about a few of those today. But we need you, the citizens of South Dublin as well, to let us know what we could be doing differently, what we could be doing better, what you think of what we're doing so far, what you want to see more of, and what we need to try that's new, that's innovative, because we are here to listen to you. We're here to tell you what's going on. We're here to tell you what we've done so far, what we plan to do. But the most important part of the conversation is you, the citizens, the residents here. So I encourage you to get involved in Dublin Climate Action Week and to sign up for and attend as many events as you can. You can find all the information on dublinclimateactionweek.ie. But as for tonight's event, this panel will discuss and focus on the 5 areas that make up the Council's Climate Change Action Plan. So we call them chapters. They're chapters in our Climate Change Action Plan, and we will have a chapter on energy and buildings. We will hear about the chapter on transport, the chapter on flood resilience, on nature-based solutions, and the chapter on resource management. Every presentation will highlight the key achievements, the progress, and really importantly, the stumbling blocks so far, where we've gone well and where we haven't and where we need to improve. When you're working with something as recently in the mindset as climate change, it's important that we try, to paraphrase Samuel Beckett, that we try hard, we fail, we learn, we try again. So we'll begin with the first chapter, which is going to be the chapter on the first person we're going to hear from will be our climate change coordinator. Darby Mullen is going to give you a broad overview of what we are going to talk about this evening. He's going to give you an overview, sort of the 30,000 foot version of our climate change action plan. So we'll pass you over now to our climate action officer, Darby Mullen.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Darby Mullen. I'm Climate Action Officer with South Dublin County Council, and my role is to coordinate the Council's response to climate change through the actions identified in our first Climate Change Action Plan, which was adopted by the Council in 2019. The plan was developed to deliver a range of mitigation and adaptation strategies against the increasing risks associated with climate change. In South Dublin, the main risks identified are extreme weather events, increasing frequency and intensity, flooding from intense rainfall events coupled with an increase in impermeable surfaces, and air quality. Our Climate Change Action Plan contains 130 actions across 5 action areas, and these are energy and buildings, transport, flood resilience, nature-based solutions, resource management. And we have a 6th action area, citizen engagement, and this is key to helping South Dublin County Council achieve the main targets of the Climate Change Action Plan. We have 6 climate action teams that work on delivering the 130 actions, and the chair of each team is here this evening to talk you through some of the progress being made. Our plan has 4 main aims. A 50% improvement in our energy efficiency by 2030. Originally, this was a 33% improvement in energy efficiency by 2020. We achieved this in 2019, 1 year ahead of schedule. A 51% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 and net zero by 2050. Originally, this was a 40% reduction in our greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. To make Dublin a climate resilient region by reducing the impacts of future climate related events and actively engage and inform our citizens on climate change. So every year, South Dublin County Council report back on our overall energy use to our energy agency, CODEMA. We send details of fuel consumption such as oil, gas, petrol and diesel from our fleet, and electricity from our facilities and public lighting. CODEMA then compile an annual review outlining our energy use for the previous year, and these reports are extremely interesting, full of graphs and figures explaining how we are doing as an organisation towards achieving our targets. Key figures such as 47 gigawatt hours of primary energy was consumed in 2019, producing 8,678 tonnes of carbon dioxide. We know from the review that public lighting accounts for 44% of our total energy consumed. Our leisure centres at Tala and Clondalkin use 15% of our energy. Offices, heating and electricity use 12%, transport of our municipal fleet uses 9%, and other facilities combined use 20%. This information is really useful as it helps us to identify where to invest resources in order to make the greatest impact on our greenhouse gas emissions. And as you can see, public lighting is our biggest offender. There are approximately 29,000 public lights in our stock, and these are located in towns and villages, housing estates, and along local and regional roads. Phase 1 of a replacement programme from 2014 to 2020 has been completed, and 9,689 sodium oxide lighting units were replaced with more efficient LED units. Phase 2 of the programme is now underway, and South Dublin County Council plan to replace 1,500 units in 2021. The energy performance of public lighting has improved by 34.5% since the baseline, and this represents an absolute reduction of 9.8 gigawatt hours of primary energy and 3,450 tonnes of carbon dioxide. Heating our offices and leisure facilities demands a significant amount of energy, and at the moment this is done through burning oil and gas and through electricity. But I'm going to park this one as Mr. Eddie Conroy, the chair of our Energy and Buildings team, will give updates on current projects to reduce our demand for fossil fuels. Under the transport heading, we are seeking to increase our levels of active travel within the county. Modal shift of commuters away from single occupancy private cars to public transport and active travel options are key to reducing emissions and congestion and improving health and quality of life. South Dublin County Council have 5 electric vans, and these have been successfully deployed within different departments of our organisation, and we look forward to increasing the proportion of EVs in our fleet as older vehicles are replaced. And while we recognise that electric cars and vans are a major improvement over their fossil fuel equivalents, they're not the complete solution, and we are investigating other modes of transport for staff, including e-bicycles. On the adaptation side of our strategy, we are managing projects to protect homes and properties from the effects of climate change, in particular flooding. And this is being done through careful planning and land use. We have a number of flood relief schemes and integrated constructed wetlands in progress. We have a biodiversity action plan, and we are currently developing green infrastructure and parks and open spaces strategies with supporting documents that will feed into the next iteration of the South Dublin County Development Plan. A communications plan will help us to reach our communities with news and updates on our progress as we deliver on current actions and develop new projects to reduce CO2 levels in the county. Thank you, Mayor.
It's interesting to see that, in particular, that chapter, that pillar on citizen engagement. So that's why we have the opportunity now for you to put your questions in tonight and to send them in afterwards as well by email if you want, because climate action, while the local authority will certainly provide a leadership role, we were struck earlier on today at the launch of Dublin's Climate Action Week by how much of the picture of energy use is actually made up by residential properties, privately owned residential properties. So, you know, that old story of climate action begins at home. There's a kernel of it that's incredibly true. We'll move on now to the next chapter.
Good evening. I'm Eddie Conroy. I'm the County Architect with South Dublin County Council. Since the county was established in 1994, we've been very interested in issues of energy efficiency and renewable technologies. And it was in 2013 that we set up our first Sustainable Energy Action Plan to put a strategic shape on how we were going to deal with these issues. Its motto was record, reduce and replace. Record was to do with evidence-based, recording our energy usage, the costs, how we could make business cases for further improvements. Reducing was obviously to do with fabric and energy efficiency in buildings, but not just buildings, but the way buildings are put together and consolidated development. And replace was to do with the removal of fossil fuels or less dependency on fossil fuels and replacement with renewable energy technologies. So what energy do we use in a year? Looking at this chart, you can see a glide path for the top one, 40% reduction in emissions over a period up to 2030. On the bottom one, 50% reduction in energy usage, again up to 2030. I'm happy to say that we achieved our 2020 target of 30% energy reductions from the baseline year of 2009 last year. And we're now getting ready for the next 10 years effort to get us under the line for 2030. In a typical year, we use around 47 gigawatts of electricity, and you can see the spread of prime energy. This is both electricity, gas and diesel fuels across the different departments of the council. The largest one, as you can see, is a whopping 44% for public lighting, and that follows on through into leisure centres, offices and other uses. The figures I'm showing you here are from 2019. 2020 was an anomalous year really in terms of the COVID, with about an average of between 20 and 23%, depending on how you measure it, across savings across the council due to buildings being in lockdown and less interaction with the general public. You can see here the public lighting figure. Public lighting is almost half of our energy usage in a year, and we have about 30,000 public lights in the county. Of those, about 10,000 are LED, and we continue a programme up until 2030 to replace SOX and SON lights, older lights, with the new LED lights. Since the start of this our drive towards 2020, we've reduced public lighting energy by 35.4%. It's a goodly amount, and we still have to continue on to achieve our target by 2030. Another big user is our offices, and we've the large building in County Hall is about 12,000 square metres, and we have a smaller office store big enough in Clondalkin. They use about 12% of our energy every year. And again, since the start of our effort towards 2020, we've reduced that energy usage in both buildings by about 15%. So we need to improve that. And our general savings have been in the area of lighting and electricity. We've replaced about 50% of lights in the Tala offices with LEDs, and we'll continue on that. We'll have them replaced in maybe a 3-year programme, and then we'll move on to the Clondalkin offices. We haven't had as much success in the area of heat and gas usage, with bills, the amount of bills and the amount of energy increasing over the last 5 years since 2016, which is one of the reasons why we're interested in the idea of district heating, which we'll be talking about now shortly. Another big user are the Tala and Clondalkin leisure centres. They use about 15% of council energy used over the year, and they're very difficult to measure because they're large regional sized swimming pools, and they've got halls and gyms and very complex energy pattern. And in fact, looking at that chart in the middle there, you can see 2018 a very unusual. One went up and one went down. Still kind of trying to get to the bottom of that. But leisure centres, over the time since the baseline year, we've saved about reduced energy usage by 22% on those, so it's quite good. But we feel that we can achieve a further maybe 23 to 25% through the idea of energy performing contracts, where we rationalise how they're maintained, and the people who maintain them have a vested interest in reducing the amount of energy used, and they're paid accordingly. Dublin City Council have used this to effect now on 3 swimming pools in their area, so we'll be looking at that through 2022. The last one we're going to look at here is transport. Transport uses about 9% of our energy. We have about 70 vehicles in the fleet, and they do need to be replaced. We've been thinking long and hard about that, waiting for it to become clear. Is biofuels or electricity, EV vehicles, what's the best way to deal with those? So we're still trying to make a program for that. Between 21 and 24 we'll be replacing those 70 vehicles. But so far we've managed to reduce, since the baseline, again about 15% of energy usage on those. Last year, despite the downturn, we only saved about 6 or 7%. As there were still people moving around on behalf of the council. But it's not just the council, it's the whole of the county in a way that we have to start thinking about also. I mean, the council is a very large energy user, but in terms of how we approach sustainability and climate change, we've got to start thinking in the way that Darby described in the previous talk about how we have to look at this. CODEMA, the City of Dublin Energy Management Agency, have advised us on the preparation of energy maps. You can see them here. One side is about how users are distributed, and the other one is what the energy demand. And we also have heat demand maps, but we're interested in the idea of our stakeholders, our sustainable energy communities, larger users in the county, how we can act to as a platform to form communities of interest in terms of how sustainability would work, or how we can begin to tackle climate change. The interesting project in terms of stakeholders and reaching out is the Tala District Heating Project. Based on an original EU project called HeatNet, we agreed with Amazon, who are building a large data centre on Belgard Road, that they would share the recyclable heat, the waste heat that came from that, with us, and we would form a network of district heating pipes that would allow us to distribute that heat both to our own building on the left hand side there, the County Hall, and to the Tala IT, or what's now the Technical University of Dublin. And we started work on that earlier this year in 2021, and we're laying about 1.5 kilometres of pipework that will bring the heat from that district, along that district heating line from the Amazon data centre. With 4 megawatts of heat available from the data centre, we can serve both public buildings, commercial buildings and residential. And this aerial photograph gives you an idea of the potential customer base, including the County Hall and the TUD, as we mentioned already, new residential developments with planning permission on Belgard Road and in Cookstown, 133 affordable apartments which will be going on site for the SDCC next year, an innovation centre for SDCC, and offices at project management. The waste heat comes from the data centre at 23 degrees, so it's not very warm. It has to be raised in temperature, consolidated by heat pumps, electrical heat pumps, and that brings it up to about 85 degrees. and then it travels around the pipes at that level, so it can deliver a good service both summer and winter. It can also help in cooling in the summertime. You can see that on the left-hand side there's the idea of how it's collected, how it's put through the heat pumps. The thermal storage allows us to use different heat sources and to retain heat in fallow periods. And on the right-hand side are the various customers and the customer bases that will drive the project. The Energy Centre is a plant building, I suppose, sitting at the end of the data centre there at the junction of Ayrton Road and Belgard Road. We've tried to make it as interesting as possible. It's got a kind of an interesting butterfly roof, and it's clad in copper shingles, so it'll look different than all the industrial buildings around it, and it'll also have a sign that announces the carbon that's being saved and the energy that's being generated. In real terms, it will save about 1,600 tons of carbon a year, which is and that's just for phase one. That'll grow as time goes by and as the number of customers increases, and the amount of waste heat we save will drive that figure onwards over time. So district heating is much more than just a heating solution. As you can see here, it increases plant efficiency and reduces waste heat and captures waste heat which would otherwise be discharged into water or air as carbon. The thermal storage, which we won't be building in the first phase but we'll be building later, can act as demand response for fluctuations on the renewable sources driving the grid. Customer safety, there's no combustion on site. It's low carbon and reduces air pollution and, as I said, waste heat going into the atmosphere. It integrates a whole range of renewables. It's a platform rather than an energy source, so it can use all sorts of different both renewable and fossil fuels, though we're trying to reduce fossil fuels and trying to reduce those imports. It's a low-cost heat because the centralised plant and individual users don't have to have their own plant with short lives and replacing them. And it's a new market, so we're very interested in this, and in our partnership with TUD and Tala, we'll be introducing training programs to do with heating technologies and renewable sources across our new district heating company, South Dublin District Heating Company Limited, which will trade as Heatworks. So we're hoping to bring new high-tech jobs into the centre of Tala and become a centre for renewable technologies and the skills that attend that. So thank you all.
I did misspeak earlier on. This is the first online event South Dublin County Council is doing as part of Dublin's Climate Action Week. There was a tour of the Tala District heating system earlier on, and I'm delighted to report that it was so popular that we actually had a waiting list of 22 people for the tour. We could have done 2 tours easily, so it's a very exciting and intriguing project, and I know we'll get Eddie to comment later on a few of the fine details of that presentation around energy usage and this and the likes. We'll move on now to the next chapter, which is the transport chapter, and this one is going to be presented for us by John Joe Hegarty. So are we ready to bring up John Joe's presentation? Excellent. Well, over to you, John Joe.
Hello, my name is John Joe Hegarty. I'm Acting Senior Engineer in Traffic and Transportation for South Dublin County Council. In this presentation, I will outline the actions that STCC are undertaking to tackle greenhouse emissions in the transport sector within our county. There are 3 principal transport aims to reduce the carbon levels of the transport sector. We are encouraging shorter journeys with compact growth planning policies, which makes active travel a more attractive mode. We are planning to deliver improved active travel and public transport facilities in our county with the aid of our transport partners such as the National Transport Authority, Transdev and Erin Road Erin. We are promoting greener policies on electric cars, electric bus usage and rail services in our county. It has been found that compact growth is a very important factor in determining the travel mode choice of the commuter. There are 4 key trip generators, and these are work trips, school trips, shopping trips, and amenity journeys. Providing a good mix of development in close proximity to residential encourages these journeys to be made by active travel. As we can see from the table that walking journeys are most frequent when the distances travelled is less than 2 km. Likewise, cycle usage drops significantly when journeys are more than 6 km long. Higher density development of the compact growth model makes frequent high-quality public transport provision more cost-effective. STCC is encouraging a modal shift away from the car to more sustainable modes by insisting on improved pedestrian linkages on all new planning applications. We will improve the continuity and the permeability and the safety of our existing pedestrian network. Good permeability means that there are sufficient direct links to all desired lines from residential developments. This is a complete change from the enclosed cul-de-sac estates of the past. STCC is delivering and facilitating the delivery of €280 million investment in improved cycle infrastructure under the Cycle South Dublin programme. This phased delivery will be split into schemes to be delivered within the next 2 years, the now schemes, the next 5 years, soon schemes, and later schemes to be delivered in the next 8 years. The NTA has committed to funding the majority of the schemes identified in the now and soon lists. Ian Road Erin are committed to delivering the Dart Plus South West project. This will electrify 2 of the tracks between Hazelhatch and Houston Station and increase passenger numbers from 5,000 passengers per direction per hour to 20,000 passengers per direction per hour at peak times. These measures will help reduce the reliance on the private car and thereby reduce carbon emissions and encourage more efficient public transport and active travel usage. The following network map shows the existing cycle network in South Dublin in green. It shows the intended schemes to be delivered over the next 2 years in red. The intended schemes to be delivered within the 5 years is in purple, and the schemes to be delivered within 8 years are in orange. The full programme of works identified is a capital investment of €280 million in the cycle infrastructure in the county. The National Transport Authority are in the process of delivering 16 number core bus corridors throughout the Dublin metropolitan area. 5 of these routes predominantly serve the South Dublin local authority. This investment will deliver frequent rapid bus services in a radial direction towards the city centre. Thereafter, more frequent orbital routes will be delivered between the major neighbourhood centres in the county. The current phase of core bus corridors is at the statutory planning stage. It is envisaged that construction of these routes will begin in 2022 and be completed by 2027. The map shows the extent of the Dart Plus South West project. The main improvements will be made between Hazelhatch Station and Houston Station, with a link to the Dart Plus West line at Glasnevin Station. The project will include the electrification of 2 of the 4 tracks proposed and a peak passenger capacity of 20,000 people per direction per hour at peak times. The investment will deliver a number of climate action targets, such as reducing car congestion and contributing to multimodal connectivity to the Lewis Bus Connects and active travel links. And the summary points are: I have talked about the importance of compact growth to promote active travel and cost-effective public transport facilities. STCC are working with our transport partners in delivering both active travel projects and facilitating some major public transport investments like Bus Connect and the Dart Plus South West project. The delivery of these projects will encourage commuters to use more sustainable modes of travel and thereby lower the carbon footprint of the transport sector in our county. Thank you for listening.
It's a very interesting presentation. Thank you very much indeed, John. I think what's key to it there is the modal shift that we have to start changing just how we're even thinking about journeys and moving from the dominance of the private car to more cycling and active travel, to more walking, to more public transport. And a lot of that, of course, is in the hands of our transport partners, as John mentioned, but the council truly is taking the lead on some aspects of that. We'll move on to the next chapter, which is flood resilience. So if we're ready to queue up Chris Galvin's chapter, Chris will be presenting this for us.
Hello, my name is Chris Galvin. I'm Senior Engineer in South Dublin County Council. I'm going to talk to you about the flood resilience actions in our Climate Change Action Plan 2019 to 2024. Climate change is having an effect on our weather patterns, and this is particularly true for rainfall. In the recent IPCC report, we can see that there is an increase in our annual rainfall. This is shown as the red line in the graph on the right-hand side of the chart. We're also seeing far more intense rainfall events occurring more frequently. This is leading to flooding in our county and in our country. There are two types of flooding that are being caused by this rainfall. We have fluvial flooding, which is a river flooding, and pluvial flooding, which is caused by the intense rainfall events and particularly affects urban areas like South Dublin. The impacts of these rainfall events can be severe for the areas and the communities in which they happen. The two photographs below show flooding locations in South Dublin, in Lucan and in Homeville. South Dublin has to react to this and has created a South Dublin County Council Climate Change Action Plan. It has a total of 130 actions, and 22 actions are around flood resilience and making the county more adapted to this changing climate and the severe weather. I'm going to run through some of these key actions that we are taking to make our county more resilient and adapt to climate change. In adapting to this changing climate and building resilience in our county, we need to map the vulnerable areas that are at risk of flooding in South Dublin. We're doing this through the County Development Plan process, which is currently underway. This builds on previous work done by the OPW and their CFRAMS mapping programme. We've done a strategic flood risk assessment for the county, which identifies areas that are at risk of flooding, and we can put objectives in the County Development Plan for the protection of these areas and the management of this flood risk. We're also mapping our riparian zones, which are the river corridors where the river would naturally flood. This has positive impacts for biodiversity and for the river and for management of our flooding. We're also carrying out an exercise to map the green infrastructure of the county. These often are areas which run along our rivers as well, and natural green areas are important buffers when it comes to managing flooding within our county, and hence making it more resilient and protecting our citizens from flood events. Flood alleviation schemes are a key action in adapting to climate change and making South Dublin a more resilient county. Currently, we are working with the OPW and others to deliver flood alleviation schemes in the county. The Poddle Flood Alleviation Scheme, which will protect 920 properties once completed, is currently awaiting a decision from An Bord Pleanála. We submitted a Part 10 planning application to them, and all details for the scheme can be found on poddlefas.ie. We are also working to deliver the Whitechurch Flood Alleviation Scheme. This scheme will protect 170 properties on completion. Planning was granted in December, but is currently under judicial review. Details on this can be found on whitechurchfas.ie. We're also working on the Cammack Flood Alleviation Scheme. This is at an early stage of design. All details can be found on cammackfas.ie. Traditionally, flood schemes used hard engineering defences. We've now moved to using more green, sustainable means of protecting our localities from flooding. Sustainable drainage systems, or SUDs, are an important feature when managing rainfall and surface water. The aim of the sustainable drainage system is to mimic nature and manage the water at source, using natural features to ensure that the water is managed locally, some infiltrated and treated prior to discharging to our rivers and streams. Traditionally, pipe systems did not do any of the treatment, and the discharge to the stream happened very rapidly from hard surfaces. It's a nature-based solution, and it's multifunction as there are added enhanced biodiversity and better amenity. South Dublin County Council is currently drafting a SUDS guidance document for both developers and homeowners. Features such as tree pits, grasscrete, swales, detention basins, and permeable paving, as seen in the photos, are examples of sustainable drainage features. So Dublin County Council are also working on a Dublin Urban Rivers Life project. This is an EU funded project which aims to improve the surface water quality in our rivers and streams. The aim is to achieve the standards set out in the Water Framework Directive of having good environmental status in our rivers and streams. Part of the project will involve building 5 integrated constructed wetlands on various locations around the county. These wetlands will be planted, and the plants will remove pollutants from the water as it passes through the wetland prior to discharging to our river. It is hoped over the lifetime of the project that we will help to improve the water quality in a number of streams in South Dublin. There are actions that the citizens in South Dublin can take to help make the county more resilient to extreme weather and rainfall events. Retaining green spaces in private gardens, which helps to prevent the growth of urban creep, is really important. Urban creep is a term used to describe where green spaces are getting turned into either concrete or macadam, and hence increasing the speed at which rainfall moves to our rivers and streams. Installing rain gardens is another option for people in order to maintain water locally and reduce that runoff. Planting trees is important and has multiple benefits from biodiversity and for shade. Water butts are another feature that people can install which helps reduce the runoff from their properties. South Dublin County Council is creating a homeowner's SUDS guide which will help describe how these actions can be taken by our citizens and help in making South Dublin a more resilient county in terms of weather, rainfall events and climate change.
Nice to see citizen actions as part of that. It's always nice to know what we can do while the council is taking a lead as well. And I note that one of the key things that we can do under flood alleviation is mimic nature. And part of the problem and why we are where we are is that the human impact over the last 250 years has just increased exponentially, decade on decade. And that sort of harmony with nature, and what we used to do to allow nature to take care of itself, has been sort of left out. And it's nice to see that captured in the flood alleviation chapter, but it forms maybe the core of this next chapter, which is nature-based solutions. And to present to us on nature-based solutions, we're going to have a video from Suzanne Furlong. So maybe we can cue that one up, get that one ready to go, and we'll go over now to this presentation from Suzanne Furlong.
Hello, this presentation outlines actions under the Nature-Based Solutions theme in South Dublin County Council's Climate Change Action Plan. Nature-based solutions are particularly important within SDCC's Climate Change Action Plan as we work with nature to deal with climate change. Nature-based solutions have a crucial role under both adaptation and mitigation, with many actions providing both benefits simultaneously. One of SDCC's climate change actions that will tie a number of initiatives together and allow us to plan for the future in a coordinated way is the development of a green infrastructure strategy for the county. South Dublin is planned to have large sections of our river valleys in public ownership, and where it is designated as a parkland or open space it is not built on. This action has helped protect the floodplains of those river valleys and allowed us to develop linked park networks that protect ecological corridors and confer a large natural recreation and visual amenities to the people of South Dublin. The preserved lands also help us to adapt to climate change, accommodating occasional floodwaters if required. SDCC are currently building a greenway along the Dodder River Valley, which will support and improve the environment and encourage sustainable modes of transport. Elsewhere, we're working with the OPW on their flood alleviation plans for the river valleys to encourage as much as possible the use of natural-based flood prevention systems. The OPW have recently agreed to include an integrated constructed wetland into their plans for the Poddle Flood Relief Scheme as a mitigation factor and will help clean that river of pollutants. Development of a GI strategy for the county will put this type of work on a strategic footing. By identifying our important green infrastructure assets, it will allow South Dublin to plan for the future. The Green Infrastructure Strategy is currently at public consultation stage as part of the Draft County Development Plan. A Parks and Open Space Strategy is also being developed in tandem with the GI strategy. It has also generated policies and objectives that are contained in the Draft County Development Plan and will be subject to a separate public consultation at a later stage. SDCC have signed up to the All-Ireland Pollinator Plan and have developed our own action plan tailored to the environment of SDCC's parks and open spaces. Some of our actions to benefit pollinators have been underway for some time. For instance, in order to develop wildflower meadows specific to our county, altered mowing regimes have been in place in a number of our larger parks for a number of years. This has proven to be popular and highly successful, with orchids in the thousands being counted in some of our parks. In addition, we've audited some of the meadows with insect surveys, and they contain a wide variety of insect life. In addition to the pollinator benefits, there are also benefits to assist with climate change adaptation. It has been reported that a wildflower meadow can capture and store 3 tonnes of carbon or 11 tonnes of CO2 per year. We are also undertaking a social media campaign and have launched the SDCC Pollinator Action Plan video as well as an online booklet. Our signs at the meadows, including Manage for Biodiversity and Let's Create a Buzz, assist with spreading the message. To date, we have over 139 hectares of meadowlands in our public parks and open spaces, and we've also planted colourful wildflower planting elsewhere at focal points within the county, and in 2020 over 290,000 pollinator-friendly bulbs were planted throughout the county. SDCC's biodiversity plan was adopted in November 2020. Some of the actions include the invasive species mapping and treatment programme, and also the 2 years parks pollinator survey, which was completed in August 2021. Plant and insects were surveyed in our meadows in Timon Park, Waterstown Park and Lucan Domain. A hedgerow and woodland survey at Timon Park has also just been completed. This will deliver a record of species and the condition of the park's hedgerows and woodlands, and will include a management plan for this resource into the future. While chemical pesticides are an important weapon in the control of invasive species, this use needs to be carefully balanced with the damage it can cause to biodiversity. In Timon Park, South Dublin County Council has not used chemical weed killers in over 12 years. This is particularly important in this species-rich environment. In recent years, a decision was also taken by the Council to extend this further, and we no longer use glyphosate in parklands or within housing estates. Some might think this leads to a less than tidy landscape, but in recent times a greater understanding has developed of the effect that the chemicals have on bees in particular, but also on other pollinators. This has led to a greater acceptance of less pristine edges in exchange for support of our pollinating insects. The Council's tree management strategy, Living with Trees, is currently being reviewed. The current strategy deals with the planting and maintenance of trees in on-street locations. Trees in parks and urban woodland settings will be included in the scope of the review of the new strategy. The tree management policy seeks to manage existing trees appropriately and reduce the amount of trees being removed for non-essential reasons. The tree and hedgerow protection and retention of mature trees is as important as new tree planting, as it serves to retain a mature tree canopy that already supports an established ecosystem. SDCC also plants in the region of 1,500 new trees in on-street and open space locations, with a budget of approximately $150,000 provided annually for this work. All proposed schemes are also examined for opportunities for new tree planting. For example, 500 trees were planted recently as part of the Own Tree Trail in Dodder Valley, 367 trees were planted as part of Phase 1 of the upgrade of the N81, and there are plans in Shawmulch Park to implement mini woodlands in autumn 2021. SDCC is a founding member of the Dublin Mountains Partnership, who in tandem with Coillte Nature recently announced the Dublin Mountains Makeover. Coillte are moving towards a new continuous cover approach to forestry that maintains a permanent forest canopy. In areas where this is not possible, they are clear felling small areas of coniferous plantations and replanting them with native woodland within the same year. The aim of the Dublin Mountains Makeover is to improve biodiversity, climate resilience and recreation, and over the next 20 years to increase broadly from 5% to 25%, which is equivalent to about 180 hectares. The Dublin Mountains represent a significant resource in terms of green infrastructure, and the conversion of existing coniferous woodland to broadleaf woodland is considered to be a significant contribution to the development of native woodland in Ireland. South Dublin County Council will continue to engage with Coillte and our other partners in the Dublin Mountains Partnership in the development of this programme. Some of the most sustainable ways of managing increased rainfall and surface water runoff are based on working with nature. SDCC are implementing actions to provide nature-based solutions in relation to water management in our parks and open spaces. We have provided reinforced grass surfaces to replace the traditional tarmac surfaces in 2 recently built car parks. This permeable paving allows water to infiltrate the groundwater, filtering and cleaning it and allowing it to recharge groundwater supplies. Swales are being provided at Timon Park close to Kennington, Kiltipper Park, Tandy's Lane Park, Dodder Valley Park also, to attenuate surface water and improve biodiversity. As an addition to the strategic flood risk assessment for the county's development plan, which is currently on display, consultants were employed to carry out a hydromorphological assessment at the strategic level. The draft county development plan includes mapped riparian corridors with associated policy for the very first time, and these were developed on foot of the hydrological assessment. SDCC have also employed McCloy Consulting to draw up sustainable urban drainage guidelines to provide to developers and to guide SDCC's own actions in this regard. Under this heading, we are providing green roofs on our parks buildings, which intercept water from the surface water system and also support biodiversity and pollinators. The ability to grow local food is also a nature-based action within South Dublin County Council's Climate Change Action Plan. We currently provide 425 allotments and have plans to increase the number of allotments across the county to meet demand. Growing locally produced food acts as both a mitigation factor and also an adaptation factor. The control of invasive species is also becoming increasingly important and is a nature-based action. As native species come under increasing pressure from climate change, invasive species spread and dominate and turn large areas into monoculture, which outcompete more diverse species. For the past 5 years, SDCC has implemented an invasive species management regime on our public lands. We have specially trained horticultural staff who map the species and log it with GIS, and we are now in the 5th year of a control programme. This has shown successful outcomes so far, and we will continue to implement that management regime over the coming years. Climate change mitigation also requires us to review the way we provide our projects and services. We recently completed a place-based programme, and this programme is about moving from the centralised, formal, artificial type playground to a more natural-based play provision set where children live. The aim is to provide settings for children in which they can develop their own play, close to their own homes. We have moved from artificial surfaces to natural permeable surfaces, such as gravel, sand and play bark, which help with water infiltration. That completes an overview of the actions within SDCC's Climate Change Action Plan under the Nature-Based Solutions theme. I would like to thank you for your interest.
Very much indeed, Suzanne, for that presentation, and it's intriguing that the solutions to so many of our issues around climate change involve getting back closer to nature and dealing with those natural problems that we didn't really have 250, 300 years ago before the Industrial Revolution, when we lived far more harmoniously with nature. And I am pleased to see that nature-based play and unstructured play forms a massive part of that as well. And I want to commend the council on the place-based programme, in particular the Cork Park playground. One of my son's favourite parts of that is a little longhouse, a Viking-style longhouse made out of tree shoots and saplings. It's incredible that for all the slides and swings you put in something, kids love nothing more than to be at one with nature and to play in what is our most valuable resource, the place where we live. So to talk about resources and how we can manage those, we have Sharon Conroy about to present a video for us on resource management as part of the CCAP. So if we're ready to cue that up, we'll go with Sharon's video. So Sharon, it's over to you.
Hello, my name is Sharon Conroy. I am the chair of the Resource Management Action Team, and I'm the Senior Executive Officer in Environment, Water and Climate Change here in South Dublin County Council. This presentation is an update on resource management as part of the Climate Change Action Plan. Today's presentation will touch on waste management, the circular economy, in-house initiatives and landfill management. South Dublin County Council provide a civic amenity site in Ballymount, which is managed for us by Panda. 2020 tonnages collected at Ballymount showed a significant increase in all waste streams, and you can see there in 2020, 25,361 tonnes versus the figures in 2019, which were 22,992 tonnes. The new circular economy plan could see significant changes in how we manage waste, separating things out for reuse. South Dublin County Council also provide a network of bottle banks around the county, currently around 40 sites. We're always looking for new locations for bottle banks, but this is challenging as no one wants them near their home. They're problematic and attract rubbish and dumping. The Environmental Awareness Office run a number of campaigns which promotes the circular economy to citizens, businesses and schools throughout the year through a range of workshops, talks and programmes. Over the last 2 years, COVID has forced us to deliver these campaigns remotely. The Stop Food Waste campaigns aim to highlight the impact of unnecessary food waste on climate change and also the cost impact to Irish families. Christmas is a time when consumption goes up and radio and online campaigns are used to increase awareness amongst householders of their actions. Food waste and anti-dumping campaigns are rolled out across a number of mediums to promote responsible behaviour to the citizens of South Dublin. Most recently and online, a summer campaign to highlight food waste at barbecues featured Catherine Fulvio advising on preventing food waste at these events. Other initiatives, such as Eco Week, which is a significant part of our environmental education programme, sees a range of facilitators deliver workshops and talks to schools each year throughout the county. These cover a variety of topics, such as biodiversity, energy, climate change and litter prevention for children in primary and secondary schools. These have been delivered virtually in 2020 and 2021. October is Ireland's Reuse Month, which aims to reduce waste by promoting reuse. South Dublin County Council supports initiatives such as the Repair Directory at repairmystuff.ie to highlight repair as an alternative to purchasing new items. Another initiative delivered during Reuse Month is the Relove Fashion, a sustainable fashion competition for second-level schools. This is run with the Rediscovery Centre, the National Centre for the Circular Economy in Ireland, and other local authorities in the Eastern Midland region. The competition aims to highlight the impact of the traditional fashion industry on our climate and promote sustainable fashion to our young people. Our Climate Change Officer is a member of the South Dublin Chamber's CSR group to highlight climate change to other members, which include large business groups in the county. South Dublin County Council Sustainable Business Network offers local businesses a free environmental review from an experienced sustainability consultant, identifying opportunities in energy, waste and water and where savings can be made. The first information seminar was held on the 31st of March and this project is ongoing. A total of 14 water fountains have now been installed across South Dublin. Over 65,000 litres of water have been dispensed up to the end of August, and more than 131,500 ml plastic bottles have been saved, which in turn has mitigated 2,885 kilograms of plastic. A circular economy event will take place on this Saturday, the 18th, in Rathfarnham Castle Park as part of Dublin Climate Action Week. During this week, a range of workshops on climate change issues will be delivered to both community groups and young people with the aim of inspiring changes. So looking at some in-house initiatives, South Dublin County Council are working hard to eliminate single-use plastic in our canteens and at events in our administrative area. We removed all single-use cups and introduced a deposit and return cup. This was initially very successful, and while it was suspended during COVID, we are currently reintroducing them. There have been intermittent campaigns to promote recycling in council buildings, and we have discovered that this is something we need to revisit regularly. We are also looking to conserve water in local authority buildings, and one example of this is low flush toilets in our council buildings that we will be trialling. So moving on to landfill management, the site at the disused Arthurstown landfill in Kill, County Kildare, has been identified as a potential renewable energy project. It's a solar energy project at the site and it's intended to be delivered in 2 phases. The first phase will see a small-scale 75 kilowatt project which will supply the energy required to maintain Arthurstown site. This project is due to proceed shortly. And then phase 2 will look at the options for a large commercial scale 5 megawatt PV project for the site. A further feasibility study is to be completed on this project. So these are just a sample of the deliverables under the resource management chapter of the plan. With the new circular economy plan and forthcoming legislation, resource management priorities may change and present new challenges for us. But we will continue to work with all sectors to deliver the objectives of the circular economy and our own climate change action plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Sharon, for that presentation. The circular economy, it's a particular passion of mine. I'm really keen to drive it wherever possible. I think it's so fascinating that one of the most important things we can do around climate action is just go back to what our parents did and our grandparents did, and just when you have something, use it, reuse it, repair it rather than replace it. Even things like, I know when my mother is constantly reminding me, when I was in nappies, they were the reusable nappies, and yet you're hard pressed to find any young parent using reusable nappies in this day and age. The circular economy is going to be a massive part of what we consider into the future. So we'll move on to a few of the questions, and thank you all so much for submitting your questions. So maybe we can make the whole panel live rather than just focusing on me. And I'll begin with, I suppose, a big question and one that encapsulates the whole plan. And I'll put this one to Darby. The council has 2030 targets of a 50% improvement in energy efficiency and a 51% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. But what would be the most challenging aspects of these targets?
Thanks, Mayor. You can hear me, I hope.
Yeah, we can
okay,
indeed.
That's great. Yeah, the 50% improvement in energy efficiency targets, it applies to South Dublin County Council's our own operations, and we have been making very good progress on this through investment, I suppose, in public lighting and other heating projects and that. And our target for 2020 was a 33% improvement. We reached that in 2019, and we've updated that to a 50% target by a 50% improvement by 2030. But we're well on our way to achieving that too, again through investment in public lighting, and with again the heating and solar panels and that on buildings. But the 51% reduction in carbon emissions by 2030, that applies to the whole county, so not just South Dublin's own operations. Again, in terms of our own operations, we're doing quite well on that. We were at over 33% last year on it, and the district heating, when we connect to that will have a huge benefit to our own carbon emissions. But the 51% applies to the whole county across all sectors, to the public, private and industry. It'll be the biggest challenge. So engaging with property owners and businesses, providing them with guidance on how they can make the changes within their own part. It's going to take significant investment to improve homes and help people move away from the dependency on fossil fuels.
Thanks very much, Darby. We've got a couple of questions in around energy and the like, so I might ask this one of Eddie. Social housing upgrades have been taking place. What does this work entail, and what are the main benefits to citizens in South Dublin?
We've had a programme of upgrading houses for a long time, probably going on 20 years, and we've upgraded something along the lines of 4,000 homes, which initially lots of them didn't have central heating and didn't have a surprising number of them didn't even have insulation, which we've resolved. But I suppose what's happened is, as time's gone by, building regulations have asked for more and more, and Part L is one of the highest standards in Europe now. So I suppose it's this idea that each time we improve them, we're kind of outstripped again, and I suppose that's the way it should be, as we try and move forward towards optimizing the comfort and in people's homes, but also reducing their bills and reducing the country's dependence on fuels. I suppose really the earlier versions of these projects and the ones that we've done hitherto were simple ones about replacing windows, double glazing, and new doors. First of all, gas boilers, and then condensing boilers, insulation in walls and insulation in roofs, draft stripping, all the things that you'd kind of be familiar with. But new deep retrofit, for instance, we're going to do a new project as part of the government's new policy, will feature much more extensive improvements and much more intrusive into the fabric of the house. But it brings us up to much higher standards, into the top Bs or the lower As on existing stock. So we're doing a trial scheme on that this year and early next year. So I suppose that'll be the next step as to how we can figure out, number one, how we do this without discommoding people who live in the homes, and number two, how do we then industrialize how we do that to get the numbers. We own 9,500 homes. So to get up, if you think it took us years to do those 4,000 that we've done, but we need to move much quicker than that now, between now and 2030. So I think we have the technologies, we have the will. So I suppose now it's a matter of finding out what's the optimum way to do it, and how do we move fast as we can to improve the quality of those homes, but also the quality of people's comfort and the quality of their lives.
While we're on the subject of quality of life and people's comfort in their homes, Eddie, we were talking earlier on about the South Dublin District Heating Scheme. What are the key benefits going to be for the communities that we're talking about, the ones most affected?
I suppose initially the project is a kind of a pilot stage, and it's going to take 2 big public buildings, our own office and the DoD main campus building. But in the second phase, which is coming next year, we'll move into, we'll be building 133 affordable apartments, and this will be the first time that we'll have moved district heating into a kind of apartment building. But it's quite common, as you know, in the Nordic countries, and we're helped in this by our ESCO. The people who are designing and building this for us are from Finland, so they're not unfamiliar with hardy weather. And so we'll. But I suppose for the people who live in it, there's a couple of things. One is it'll be good value, and as time goes by and carbon taxes start to bite, it'll be better and better value because it's very low carbon. For instance, the 1,500 tons, 1,500 to 1,600 tons in the first phase, the first 2 buildings, is about a fifth of our carbon generation in a year. So as time goes by and we start to roll it out into apartments and into people's homes, people can, be safe in the knowledge that they're contributing to a lower carbon atmosphere. But the other thing about it is that it's a neat technology. It works as easily as a gas boiler that you're used to, but there's only one heat exchanger in the building, and it also produces hot water all day, 24/7. So that it's, in terms of, number one, in terms of its ease and its maintenance, it's low. Number two, it produces hot water on demand. And number three, which should be better value, and as time goes by, will be cheaper. And as well as that, there's also the idea people nowadays are, through Part L and through things, are all investing in heat pumps. The life cycle of heat pumps is not that high, but the district heating, as an idea, will be a 70 to 90 year time scale. So the centralized equipment we'll have will be upgraded across that, and it'll be a longer lived and better used thing because it's shared across all of these. There's permissions for up to 5,000 homes in the Cookstown area now, and hopefully when they start to get built, we'll be able to bring central heating to them with all the advantages that can bring.
Thanks very much, Eddie. And I think that's key when it comes to selling climate action, is the benefits to people in real terms in their own homes. So if they can, at the very least, not lose out, still feel warm, still feel comfortable, but contribute to a carbon neutral economy, it's really, really crucial. We'll move on from council buildings and council projects to council's parks, and there's a couple of questions. I might take 2 of them together now for Sharon. There's a question on recyclable waste bins in parks, and then eventually when the much vaunted deposit return scheme happens, are there any plans to introduce reverse vending machines, deposit vending machines in parks? this questioner notices that in parks the litter is primarily recyclable drink waste, and I think everyone who's walked through one of our parks would agree that they see coffee cups and drinks cans and bottles being thrown. So once the deposit return scheme comes in, what are our plans to interact with that, and are we looking at introducing a broader range of recycle bins, maybe not just in parks but throughout the county?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So just to address, I suppose, the bins first, that, you know, this is something that will happen eventually. We hope like that the circular economy, that really should be, you know, see less waste produced. And that's the way we want to go. First of all, is to reduce the waste. And then we'll also promote, you know, leave no trace. And that's what we are promoting right now. And especially since there's been so much outdoor activity in the last year, we've really been trying to push that one home. Just to address the deposit and return machines, they will be introduced as part of the circular economy, but they won't feature in parks because they need power to use them. So it's likely that we'll probably see them in places maybe such as supermarkets or, you know, the shopping centres, somewhere like that. Do you want me to take the question just about the bin charges maybe as well?
Yeah, we'll ask that one. Are there any plans to encourage private bin companies to have cheaper prices for people who pay per lift rather than standing charges, as a way of encouraging citizens to reduce their waste and maybe recycle more than use traditional waste bins?
Okay. So I suppose the first thing to note about bin companies is that they're private companies, and that the bin charges are monitored by the department on an ongoing basis. So, you know, they did try to introduce a pay by waste scheme before a few years ago, but it was put on hold. I suppose the big thing that we need to drive here is that we want people to reduce their waste, and that's what the circular economy is all about. We need people to reduce their waste, and then we should see a change within that. So, you know, less packaging and so on. So really the bin companies, you know, we will look at that and hope that they'll drive their costs down. But I suppose because they're monitored by the department, that's the first call.
Okay, thanks very much indeed, Sharon. We'll sort of go back to parks now and just ask Suzanne to come in and maybe answer a couple of the questions that have come in. Here's a very important one. Will you be installing more water fountains in public parks and playgrounds? And this is as a means to encourage people to bring their own bottles to parks rather than bringing disposable bottles of water with them.
Yeah, thanks very much. We've been installing these over the last number of years, and I think Sharon mentioned in our presentation there that we're up to 14, which is great. Now, we're kind of assessing projects as we go forward as to whether we can install them, you know, if the project is suitable. So anyone who has a project in the council is asked, do you think a water fountain would suit here? For instance, our Teen Space programme is underway at the moment, so we'll have 4 or 5 of those delivered over the next 12 months or so, and each of those will have a water fountain. So it's kind of suck it and see if there's a project available, we'll put one in.
So we're going to get them in wherever we can. That's brilliant. There's a very brief question here as well. When we do ecological surveys of parks, will those be publicly available?
Sometimes we are advised not to publish ecological information that might be sensitive, and unfortunately it's a sad fact that some of the more sensitive animals can be targeted, you know, so we don't publish that information. However, you will generally find that the ecological survey information is available in the environmental reports that we publish on the public consultation portal where it's appropriate. So if we're doing projects or whatever in a park and we survey the entire park, that'll be available online.
And one last question on this particular topic while we have you, Suzanne. Are there plans to plant more trees to capture carbon, or even to allow citizens to plant more in public parks using big national campaigns such as, for example, 1 million trees?
Yeah, we've got an annual planting programme that's published every year with our annual tree management plan, and I think though I was speaking rather fast in my presentation, I was saying that we plant 1,500 trees as part of that annual planting programme, as well as trees that are planted in different projects around the county as well. I suppose in terms of mass planting of trees, we have to be very careful that what we're planting is in the correct location, and also that it's adequately resourced. You can understand that a lot of our parks, like they're they're multi-use. You'll see, for instance, our larger parks have a large amount of woodland in them, but some of the smaller ones have other calls on their use as well. So we plant where we can and where it's appropriate, and involvement of the public is very welcome. During National Tree Week and so on, we tend to have school children planting our trees and so on. And this autumn in Sean Walsh Park, I think there's a community group going to give us some assistance with planting a mini woodland, which we're trying out in Sean Walsh Park. But yeah, we've very much, it's part of the plan going forward.
Excellent, very exciting stuff. One of the key things that we can do is achieve a modal shift from using the private car to public and active forms of transportation. So there's a question in here, and I'm going to put it to John Joe. Will we see more and more cycle paths, particularly to schools? And how can a member of the public request a new cycle path to a school? And also, there's a fantastic suggestion here that the council should gift a bicycle or bike voucher to every child that starts secondary school every year. There should also be 3 kilometre of cycle lanes around every school. So maybe, John Joe, if you might address those, but also touch on Cycle South Dublin and what we have in our plans at the moment and how that's going to affect people. I'll just ask you to come off mute there, John Joe, please.
Thank you, Mayor. So yes, Cycle South Dublin is quite a comprehensive programme of works planned over 3 phases up to 8 years. So there'll be schemes under the first phase, schemes done under 2 years, then 5 years, and then 8 years. There's about 45 schemes identified. And what we did was we looked at the existing network that we have in the county, and we looked at the gaps that are in those network in terms of continuity, in terms of lack of safety at junctions, pinch points, etc. So we try to, we're going to correct them in our improvement works. And also just in terms of extending the network as well, looking at where are the desired lines to neighbourhood centres, etc. So that is what the plan is about, and there's 280 million, which is a very ambitious plan. And the NTA is committed to not only the 2-year programme, but as far out as the 5-year programme, which is quite unprecedented. That commitment for funding is there, so the will is there to make those improvements. Now, in terms of schools, vulnerable users are always at the top of our minds in terms of, one of the barriers to cycling, and one of the major barriers, is the concern over safety and the interface between vehicles and the cyclist, and for that matter, pedestrians. So the National Cycle Manual is the Bible. It's been updated again as we speak, and we're waiting, but it's a very good at, addressing how a cycle track should be designed in terms of the segregation, in terms of the speed of the road, etc. Should it be separated? Can it be actually shared, etc. And another Bible that we use for road design is Demures, which is the design manual for urban roads and streets, and it really is a more balanced road design manual than would have been the tradition. We would only just looked at the car, and the Demures document now looks at the road network as a shared network, that it looks at, yes, we have to transport vehicles, that's fine, but we also have to look at the cycling and pedestrian element of it and ensure it's designed for all uses. I think that's, is that answered?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, the third one I think was about which is very interesting, is to...
Yeah, this is about permeability, is it?
No, vouchers towards schools.
Oh, vouchers for schools. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
That's a very interesting idea, and I did answer it in the chat, and we will take it on board as an interesting idea. We do have the Cycle to Work scheme. It has been very, very successful in encouraging cycling. So any sorts of those types of schemes that would encourage, a modal shift, we certainly need to take seriously and see if there's any merits in it. Hopefully that is answered.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks a million, John. I have one last question for you, and it's around permeability, because that forms part of the overall conversation about that. Are there plans to open up cul-de-sacs for pedestrians and cyclists, and what are we doing to improve permeability? Now, I know you answered this in the chat, but it might be interesting just to hear your thoughts on that.
Okay. I think there's two elements to that, and I'll deal with the easiest one first, I suppose, and that's new builds. The new design concept is permeability. It's much easier in a greenfield site to achieve that because you're coming in first thing and you're saying, look, we need permeability to all the desire lines, and you can build it in. The more difficult one, which I think the question is directed at, is what do you do in existing estates? You know, they were designed, many of them, you know, in the old cul-de-sac era, probably walled, probably one entrance, you know, that type of thing. And, you know, that doesn't, as we, you know, and I want to sort of maybe flesh this out. If you make the journey time longer, more than, let's say, 2 kilometers, you're going to discourage walking. Okay, so if you're coming out, let's say there's a walled estate, quite large, and there's one entrance to the south, and your desire line is to the north. So you have to go right round the estate, right round the wall to get to the desire line. And that probably pushes very easily the walking distance up above 2 kilometers. So what does that throw? It throws you into the use of the car and other, you know, so we, you know, the policy which makes sense is that, you know, you try and shorten, you know, direct routes to where people want to go. Now, the counter to that is we have a nice, quiet cul-de-sac here. We don't want through links, etc., into here, there, and the other, and that is the negative, right? So what I want to say is that, you know, we wouldn't do, you know, although I've been very upfront, we want permeability, but obviously we have to listen to the residents, you know, and what are their wishes, and we want to get a positive. You know, if we come to a location, we'd rather a positive consensus before we would take action in opening up a link.
That, yeah, consensus building is absolutely key. We want to make sure that we're not making massive changes to communities without the buy-in of that community. Thank you, John Joe. It was an old tradition of my grandfather to always end an event on the same day it started. So I'm only going to go through 2 more questions and see if we can get this one in. This one came in advance of the meeting by email. And it's actually fascinating. I'm going to pose this one to Chris. We do hear a lot about flooding and flood alleviation, the likes, and we hear a lot about rising sea levels. But in South Dublin, the only Dublin local authority without a coastline, is sea level rise a risk or a threat to us? So Chris, if I can get you to come off mute. Oh, you're Grant, you're with us. Sorry.
Thanks, Mary. Yeah, I suppose sea level rise, as all our rivers discharge into the sea, it will have an impact. For us in South Dublin, you know, all our rivers, most of them discharge in through each other, and then finally into the Liffey and into Dublin Bay. As we get higher tides and higher sea levels, the rate at which our rivers can discharge out of our county is impacted, and hence we're getting flooding back up along the way. Now, it probably does impact the city and the further downstream worse than ourselves. But the likes of Lucan, where the Griffin discharges, you know, that's out into the Liffey, and Lucan has had a history, and was on my presentation there, of flooding in the early 2000s in Lucan village. So yeah, as sea levels rise, the challenge for all of the authorities in Ireland, no matter where they are, even you'd see it in the west of Ireland all the way up along the Shannon, you know, the rivers are connected to the sea, and it rises, so does the water level there. So it impacts on all of us. I suppose what we don't see is those storm flood events where the overtopping of, you know, maybe seawalls, and that obviously isn't something we see, and the surge, but the discharge of our rivers to those higher level seas do impact us, and it does mean that we need to generate better areas of flooding and utilising our parks and open spaces. As Suzanne said earlier, you know, they're multifunctional spaces. Most of the time that's for playing sport and recreation and planting trees, but in times of severe weather, that multifunction includes being an area where we can retain water in a time of a flood, store it there, protect our residents, protect our infrastructure such as roads, railways, to allow people to move around the county in storm events, and then discharge back to the rivers and streams when the sea level has dropped, and our rivers can discharge into the Liffey and out on into the sea. So I suppose a long way around saying, yeah, it still affects us, even though we're not a coastal county.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of being out with residents of a particular area of Rathfarnham on Saturday, and they showed me the area where the small river that flows into the Poddle flooded over the wall during Hurricane Charlie in 1986. And it just goes to show you, once we see more and more of these extreme weather events, we will see more and more inland flooding. And of course, the most important point that I think Chris got across very well is we are all in this together. You know, we can't just sit back on our high horse while Clontarf is underwater. It's going to reach us eventually. So I think that's well put. I've one more fascinating question. I don't know, Darby or Eddie, which of you wants to take it, but it's around sustainable energy communities. People don't know a lot about this, and it seems like a very, very interesting way to deal with our carbon footprint. Could more work be put into sharing information on how to set one up, and how do people find out about sustainable energy communities? Darby.
Mayor, yeah, I'll take that if you don't mind. So, yeah, the Sustainable Energy Community Programme is run by the SEAI at our National Energy Authority, and South Dublin County Council is working with Sustaineo, and they're the appointed mentors for the communities in South Dublin. Codima, our energy agency, they're facilitating the project to support homeowners and sports clubs, community centres and businesses, even churches, to transition to sustainable energy communities. So South Dublin County Council have agreed to provide bridging finance to communities to develop their energy master plans, and this cost can be recouped back from the SEAI by South Dublin County Council after the master plan has been produced. But we're also committed to giving financial support for sustainable energy projects that might be identified in these master plans and deemed beneficial to communities under the climate, and that will be done through our innovation fund. So we're waiting on the regional framework of consultants being set up across the Dublin region, and they will assist us with our SECs in developing the master plans. So the benefits of joining an SEC are generally you can have lower energy bills, making homes and community buildings more comfortable, boosting local employment opportunities, building community knowledge and confidence and capacity, and for communities to become leaders in sustainable energy. So in South Dublin, we currently have 8 SECs, and that includes groups that were initiated, they initiated projects and at an early stage in and developing their objectives. But in terms of what we're looking at, there is an event being held on Wednesday through the Climate Action Week, and that's on Wednesday at 6 o'clock, and you can register for that at any stage. I think over the next couple of days, you want to get to us soon though. So it'll be an online event run by Sustaineo.
Thank you very much, Darby. And that event is, I think that event on sustainable energy communities is Wednesday evening. So,
it's Wednesday at 6 o'clock. What I have on it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And all details on Dublin Climate Action Week.
Yeah, go to the Climate Action Week and register.
We're going to draw the evening to a conclusion now. So I want to thank all of our heads of chapters for giving up their time tonight, for doing their presentations, for answering all of those interesting questions. I want to thank Fionnuala Ryan and Ian Jackson and all the rest of the team behind the scenes who overcame those technical glitches early on to give us a fantastic set of presentations and a very nice and interactive evening. And I want to thank you, the citizens, for attending, for watching this back later on. Climate change is the greatest existential threat the human race has ever known, and that may sound heavy, but it's true. We all have a small part to play, but for real leadership, it is going to come down to local authorities and to national governments. And I think the time of throwing everything onto personal responsibility is long over. And it's high time that we, as elected representatives and as employees of local authorities, started to show our hand and how we can lead the way when it comes to tackling climate change head on. So on behalf of South Dublin County Council, gur míle maith go bhar fad as feithenseo as bhar geistena agus as gach a dhéanann sibh son gníomh éróide. Thank you all for attending. Thank you all for your questions, your interaction, and for everything you do on behalf of climate action and to tackle climate change. Good night. Iwa Slán live.